I have chosen the video I Want to Light a Fire in You by Collegia, Carroll, and Burton from the Luigi Institute of 2019. The video expressed the negative effect of colonization and the desire of the women from the remote communities of the Ngan Jara, Pinjet Jara, Yakuni Jet Jara, or the NPY lands to acknowledge their cultural laws in the form of song and dance. The video conveyed previous and current way of life, which is governed by ceremony that contains laws and knowledge of their ancestors. These laws are slowly eroding its efficacy because their way of life has been changed from free people into learning how to look after the sheep in a mission area. When the dancer said, "Think and watch," this encouraged me to examine and reflect of the effect of repression caused by colonization. Howard et al. 2016 indicate that social workers should acknowledge the historical implementation of policies that oppress First Nation peoples. These are protectionism and assimilation, in the guise of creating welfare dependency, which also create displacement. We social workers were cohorts of the implementation of these policies until this time, as many First Nation peoples could not find their place in the society. For example, today, many are not prepared to look for employment because their parents and parents of parents are surviving from Centrelink payments. Not all of them, but this is true to most people who access human services. The issues lie on the early colonization, when early government policies did not treat them as humans like their counterpart Maori people of New Zealand. The video is inviting me to get into the world of the First Nation peoples, and it also challenging my understanding of their way of life. The metaphor of being repressed was shown when one woman covered herself with a blanket, conveying the inability to see. Seeing this scene, I felt sad and how First Nations people are feeling in prison in their own country. The woman then sat down and looked up at the interpreter, signifying the inequality they are experiencing. They hope to gain equal footings. This scene invites me to consider the intersectionality of First Nation peoples, such as the language barriers they are experiencing. Language is power, and by not allowing the persons to speak in their language is stripping their dignity as humans and at the same time taking the rights to express. Alson et al. 2018 acknowledges that language is important and using an interpreter as a practice is fundamental to social work, so people we are servicing can access correct and current interpretation. The power imbalance experienced by the First Nation peoples was expressed metaphorically when the dancer sits on the ground while white people or people embracing whiteness being above them. This signifies the importance of cultural humility practice and challenging the perception of self-determination. People cannot achieve self-determination when power imbalance exists. Thus, the dancer encourages practitioners to stand side by side and work together. This plea touched my being because it's too obvious that we, social workers, think that we are the experts of providing help and that they're trying to say is, "Hey, let's do it together." To show the remoteness of these areas, the NPY lands consist of 26 desert communities across the borders of Western Australia, South Australia, and the Northern Territory, with an area covering 350,000 square kilometers. This was taken from the Nganyat Jara Pinjet Jara Yakuninjet Jara Women Council of 2023. These are the desert inland communities of Australia, where the First Nation peoples cross borders to access the nearest services among the states in the territory. The Australian Bureau of Statistics 2021 counted the NPY lands population as 4,344 for all sexes, which means this falls in the definition of a very remote area, which is reiterated in Howard et al. 2016, defining remoteness as under the 25,000 population with difficulty in accessing services related to basic needs. As a new practitioner, it is important to understand what rural, regional, and remote area is, and it's very important to paint a picture in mind, the differences of its surroundings, the type of people and their culture, and the services they're trying to access. My initial reaction after watching the video is empathy and admiration of the women to expose themselves in public to provide an informative presentation to emerging practitioners. It dawned to me that these women can bravely talk in their language and show their capacity to inform the audience of their cultural loss and challenges of colonization. Having to live in Alice Springs for 18 years and the short placement experience at the hospital provide me with understanding of the NPY peoples and their experiences of the lack of services close to their homelands. These dry areas can sometimes create issues related to geographical support causing delays and inefficacies of services. I have limited experience with First Nation peoples as I worked with migrants and refugees in a regional setting for nearly 8 years here in Alice Springs prior to placement at the hospital. I previously assumed that organizations servicing First Nation peoples have the most funds and people in the communities are being serviced better than funds for migrants and refugees. I always wonder why most migrants, especially the refugees, with no formal education and have experienced trauma caused by war and tragedies, were able to improve their lives within 5 years of settlement. With my experience and reinforced by the video, I can see now the First Nation peoples with new perspective on their intersectionality and their disadvantaged experiences due to colonization and the remoteness of communities. These allow me to understand their context. This is evident in my current work as an allied health assistant in the hospital. Amata and Ernabella do not have the capacity to service the communities. Rather, they come to Alice Springs when remote health community clinics cannot provide major health assistance such as dialysis and complex comorbidities. On the other hand, Alice Springs as a regional area does not have the capacity to service specialized health issues. Patients are brought to the cities, such as Adelaide or Darwin. These show how rural, regional, and remote areas differ in providing services. This video is transformational because it creatively seeks and advocates for a just, fair, and compassionate engagement from practitioners or emerging social workers, especially for me. The video is transforming my point of view, seeing how the women found security and confidence to talk about their cultural knowledge and challenges when provided the opportunity to voice out their perspective. It totally empowered them. Using the theory of empowerment and advocacy, it hopes to build alliances and empower people who seek assistance to make decisions in their lives. I will make sure to include and involve their insights in case management planning and to seek advice from them if the plan is according to their tradition or if they consented with the task. The people are the experts of their lives, and our task is to assist in drawing up ideas, and we, the social workers, are co-journeying with them. This learning shapes and challenges my Western knowledge and accepts their historical and cultural knowledge, knowing that they have wisdom and cultural knowledge. It changes my attitude, assumption, and biases. They have cultural and spatial education, which I do not have. As an emerging social worker, living in a regional setting and servicing most people coming from remote communities, it is significant to understand the context of the people we are servicing.